Hello, folks. In this audio, I wish to go ahead and share how to go ahead and read your past and future incarnations. Now, when we look at this concept from our perspective, past and future incarnations are a little different from what a lot of people conventionally perceive them to be. When I look at consciousness, I see linear time as a trait of consciousness. I see the points in a linear time as a trait of consciousness. I see the uh, timeline. There isn't really timeline per se. Timeline is sort of a developed or created thing by your definition in the moment and the way things progress as well, kind of separately but also together, depending on your mode of creating, the, your mode of existence. So when we look at the idea of, let's use myself for instance, my past and future incarnations, I prefer to look at them as expressions. And I like to look at the whole assembly of them as a unit when I go ahead and look at my own consciousness. I look at it as a nonlinear construct, something that expresses across linear time, and I live it across linear time one moment at a time, to where I live it as a linear experience. However, this expression is something that can change in any given moment. So if I look at my consciousness, the seed of me, my template layer self, if you will, this can express as a wide variety of different things, and the facet of it that I'm tapped into with the elements of openness to the ways of being that I use in the moment, my mood of being, my themes of being, the physics of my being, the character traits of it, all of that. If those are the filters that I use for looking at the scope of my template layer self, my template layer self will be able to express in a multitude of different areas that all fall within the confines of those choices of being. And that can be in points in my present linear time, points in future linear time, and points in the past linear time, if you will. So I can have versions of myself in the moment that exist in the linear past relative to myself, and it's easy to tap into those because from the perspective of the section of my template layer self, these parts of me are visible, and these parts of me share consciousness with the part of consciousness that I experience right now. And so it's easy for me to connect with and understand those versions of me. So in that way, what I'm looking at is the way in which my consciousness, as I have it be in this moment, expresses in different areas of linear time. So if there's room for it to express in the past, these are the areas and ways in which it would express. If there's room for it to express in the linear future, this is where it would express and the way it would express. And even if there's room in the present, these are the areas where it would express, other than the one that I'm living, of course. So as you shift the way you choose for your life to be, you change the mood, you change the themes, and you change a wide variety of other things. It could cause you to have windows into new past versions of yourself, and even close the windows of the old past versions of yourself. And so in that way, you're tapping into a whole new dimension of self, where I wouldn't say that your linear past is changing per se, although you could experience it that way. But when you look at your template layer self, the whole scope of it, what is that like? Well, your template layer self, you'd have to go back into some of the other audios where I talk about the full entity and going up and down the densities. The template layer self resides right between the 6th and 7th density layers, and essentially is what you get when you put all of the consciousness that is higher fractal consciousness into the lower fractal consciousness, thus untasking that consciousness and having it free to be whatever it can be, thus recalling it into yourself, the part of consciousness that you take the perspective of. So it's the first point that you get to where you're living from the perspective of your entire full entity. Below the template layer level, when you have higher fractal consciousness, that higher fractal consciousness is tasked to be that of a specific character, that of specific physics, that of specific dynamics, to where you explore what consciousness is like with those dynamics. When you're at the template layer, those dynamics are fluid, and you're able to freely set them to be whatever you want and change them on a whim. So the scope of consciousness includes every expression of your soul essence in any conceivable set of physics. Think about how wide of a band of consciousness that is. Think about the infinity of possible incarnations there are there. It's a lot. It's a lot of consciousness. So when we go ahead and look at a specific fractal, like if I look at myself right now, and I tap into the part of my template layer that thematically matches me right now, I can see paralleling selves that express in my past in linear time, and I can see parallel selves that express in a future linear time. So to connect with those, feel your consciousness as it is now. What does this remind you of? What kind of historic experience does this remind you of? Or what kind of future experience does this remind you of? Let the themes of now interplay with the styles of history in different co-created collective consciousness, such as that of the Earth Collective. Then you can see your past human incarnations and your future human incarnations. And if you like, you can open up the scope of ways of being to be inclusive of those of other worlds. Often when you're connecting with these, if you let your consciousness be as open as possible, you make room for your higher fractal consciousness to assume other forms. This means that there is room for other themes and other ways of being to step forth, which can make room for past, future, or parallel, whatever you want to call it, incarnations of you on other worlds different from Earth. Let's say you have a Yael expression, or you have a Syrian or a Lyran expression. You would be able to tap into that with enough openness to kind of feel the being pattern as you look at the themes of your thoughts and feelings shift and watch your imagination kind of take a life on its own. The imagination is a very useful tool for this, because what you're doing is you're letting it be a medium of expression. And as you go ahead and connect with this consciousness, your higher fractal consciousness can help you. Your lower fractal consciousness, guided by the heart, can help you as well. So that's really all this is. What you're really doing in your essence is you're connecting to yourself, because all of these expressions are other expressions and fractals of you, of a grander level of your consciousness, that being your template layer. So that's the key to reading past, present, and future incarnations, or in other words, other expressions of yourself. And this can actually be very useful. It's helped me to get great insight into myself and what I'm being now. And I can learn lessons from other stories in that way. And it can show me a lot about what I want to be right here. Cheers, everybody. We love you, and also you are loved. That's the end of this one.